I think we're ready to go here as far as looking at our role as commissioners and recruiting for diversity. Here, so as we get started, the objectives, by the end of the time we get through this training, we want to be able to describe the need for diversity, understand the definition of diversity, and identify the practices that add to the recruiting practices that we have as far as scouters. There. Some of the things that's important is how do we ensure that every unit is supported to offer a quality scouting program. I mean, it's fairly simple. We recruit to empower enough commissioners for the task because we need to be able to describe the process there and be effective. As effective commissioners, we must have the ability to build relationships. Everything we do is based on forming and maintaining trusting relationships with unit leaders. Our attitude, character, a servant's heart are important characteristics for the commissioner, and these characteristics enable the volunteer to better form effective relationships with the scouters that they're working to support. We need to take and have volunteers who are willing to be the heart by building relationships, so that our youth and our adults will experience life-changing opportunities. When we recruit volunteers who embrace the concepts, but who may also represent some of the underrepresented groups within the community, we're able to encourage more youth to give scouting a try, as well as take advantage of volunteer youth activities and events. Now, as we go through there, Lee and Judy are basically the assistants to help monitor what's happening. So if you have a question or a comment, please feel free to take and either raise your hand or whatever. And if you see someone, please draw it to my attention, because sometimes I get going and I don't bother taking time to take a breath there. We want to look at some interesting statistics. When it comes to diversity and gender in the United States, we're about 50-50 split between male and female. In our volunteers in the scouting organization, about 65% are men and 35% are women. When it comes to the commissioner staff, what's interesting is 75% are men and about 25% are women. When we look at ethnicity, Caucasians, the general population, has about 61% are Caucasian in the United States. In scouting volunteers, 84% of our volunteers are Caucasian, and our unit commissioners are about 80% there. Hispanic and Latinos, 18% of the population is Hispanic, 4% are volunteers, and about 3% are unit commissioners. When it comes to looking at Black African American population, 12% is the population. However, we only have about 3% who are scout volunteers, and just over 1.5% that's unit commissioners. When we look at age, Generation X, those born between 1965 and 1980, they're about 20% of the population. However, our unit commissioners, 30% of them are in that group, and our unit volunteers is about 50% of that age group. When you look at the baby boomers, those born just before them, about 22% population. We have 30% unit commissioners, but about 21% are unit volunteers as far as our units. When we look at the millennials, 22% of the population, about the same as baby boomers. However, 7% of them are unit commissioners. And as far as unit volunteers, about 24%. Now, where am I going with all those fun statistics? Well, one of the things that's interesting is if you look at the population growth from 2010 to 2050, okay, they basically are saying we're going to have a 22% increase in population. Okay, of that 1% is going to be the Caucasian or the non-Hispanic population. 56% of that growth is going to be the Black population. 142%, we're going to see that kind of an increase in the Asian population. And we're going to see 167% increase in the population for the Hispanic. Okay, so what does that do to take care of and look at the statistics when it comes to assuring that we have diversity among the population? They demonstrate a need for commissioners, but how do we represent all within our scouting population? Okay, we need to understand what constitutes the diversity, how it implies the inclusion of many characteristics that differentiate us one from another, and scouting values many different perspectives when it comes to a variety of cultures, ages, physical and cognitive capabilities, as well as other ways we identify ourselves. Okay, one of the things is diversity brings depth. Every unit's different. We are better equipped to assess individual needs if we have more diversity in our commissioner corps. A diverse group of commissioners brings a broader range of ideas, concepts, and skill sets. Different backgrounds and perspectives lead to a variety of different ideas, knowledge, and ways to do things. Now, likewise, the opposite is true. The commissioner corps may take actions based on a narrow range of experiences. Okay, so by ensuring that our teams include persons from various social and cultural backgrounds, you'll widen the range of perspectives, knowledge, and approaches that are from which make decisions are made and problem solving occurs. Okay, so as we embark on our recruiting ideas, okay, we need to be able to collect information and ideas as we look at finding the different characteristics, finding the fit that fits best in each of our different areas. Okay. Let's see. We oftentimes think that the fit that we're looking for in potential volunteers is someone that is exactly the same as all of the rest of the group. But many times it's the fit can be better understood if we think about the jigsaw puzzle piece and how they mesh things together and how that each piece is unique and it contributes to something that's otherwise missing in the collective skills of the group. Now, one of the things is we can't overcome barriers to diversity until we understand internal bias. Okay? Internal bias, okay, is an attitude that's often hidden from public view and conscious awareness. As I was going through the practice sessions, inadvertently, I was referring to the members of the troop as the Boy Scouts. Okay, and then I got reminded that, no, wait a minute. There is more than the boys in the Boy Scouts. Well, in my thinking and in thinking things through, my internal bias was restricting those who could join the Scouts DSA. So we need to take and we need to look at this internal bias because our own history of life experiences shapes the way that we view the world. People tend to refer or prefer things that are more familiar, so world oftentimes lacks diversity. Stop for a minute and think to yourself. What are your own biases, both conscious and unconscious? Often we're not even aware that we make decisions thinking about a minute. Do you tend to tune out those who have foreign or regional accents? Do you feel uncomfortable around people with disabilities? Do you feel that a younger person will be quicker and more creative than an older person? Once you've made an effort to recognize your own personal biases, then we can better look at individual candidates who can serve in our commissioner's corps, and we can then better determine if the candidate's merits meets the needs of the group. Okay, recognize your own internal biases. How do we do that? Okay. Well, the national presentation says, think before you speak. Comments can serve as a constant reminder of inequality in our society. Carefully listen to critical to ensure that candidate answers are the one of essential pieces to the consideration for their qualifications. So look at it and see if you can't, think things through. Make an effort to see beyond your own experiences. Be aware of how your own experiences influence your decisions. And above all, people come in all sizes, shapes, colors, and backgrounds, and they can make good leaders. We need to put people in their roles based on their talents. Okay, so now the fun starts. We need to start some conversations. We're going to present to you some ideas and areas where perhaps bias exists in society. And we want to take and look at how we can give examples of barriers to that category. What's our barriers to stopping us from involving other individuals when it comes to our thinking process? We need to make a list of strategies, or we need to come up with strategies that will weaken or remove those barriers. And we need to discuss how personal bias limits our decision-making thought process. So as we get started, Okay. This if it were a in-face group, we would take and divide these 9 categories up into groups. We would split you into groups, and you would then discuss them. You'd have 5 minutes. You'd come back and report to the group. Well, being virtual, that's almost impossible. So what I chose to do is I chose to number each of the squares 1 through 9. So you notice down in the corner, there is a number 1 through 9. Now, the reason that I know Mike joined us was because I took the order in which you registered, and this morning before the course began, I randomly assigned each of you who are participants in this course to one of the areas of potential bias that we have, so that we could take and we could look at and we could give examples of barriers of how that could stand in the way of utilizing these individuals in the scouting program, and how we as commissioners need to understand our bias so that we can recruit from those who may be able to contribute more to us and to the program through overcoming some of our biases. So for the next few slides, or well, I'm going to go through them randomly the way that I got it selected. The instructions on the right-hand side of the screen is the examples of barriers, and that will appear on each one of them. Okay, what I would like to do is those of you whose names are underneath the individual squares, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to think through how you feel about people's experiences or gender or perspectives or language. I want you to think for a few minutes about how you would answer those 3 areas on the off to the side. Then we will pull up randomly whichever one comes next. If it's your turn to come up, the 2 of you with your names under it, I'd like you to start the discussion. And then anyone else who would like to join in the discussion, we'd be able to do that for a total of about 3 minutes. Then we'll move on to the next conversation. I realize we're not going to get through all 9 of them. So you may be lucky and not have to you do yours, but let's get started here. I'm going to set the timer for 2 minutes. Okay. And so be thinking about barriers, be thinking about strategies, how you can weaken some of the barriers, and look at how personal bias can help in the decision-making and thought process to choose good commissioners. All right. Now let's look at our first category. Oh, number 2 happened to come up first. This is on experiences. Okay, is Ethan here, and Deborah? Get your ideas first on this. And do I have you here with me? I don't see Ethan. I do see Deborah. Deborah, do you have a comment as to experiences and how they relate? Yes.
Sorry to interrupt.
The comments.
Yeah, Deborah doesn't have a microphone, so she's posted in the chat.
Oh,
She says there are sensory and mobility barriers to assisting in certain circumstances. Also, people are afraid of discrimination.
oh, perfect. Excellent comments. That way. Do any of the rest of you have any that you would like to add? I think sometimes as we look at recruiting, particularly as commissioners, we look at those around us that we're familiar with their experience. And so we reach out to them. I mean, in Wood Badge, we look at those who have been previously on Wood Badge courses. When I served as the dean of the College of Commissioner Service here a few years ago, we looked at those who had, good experience. We really weren't looking beyond those that we knew there when it come to experience on it. Okay, let's move to the next one. Let's see what it's going to do. Skills and job levels. Christine and Lee. Comments?
Okay. I'll start it out. My career was a college professor of chemistry. I get a lot of people who simply won't talk to me because they think I'm too smart. And I'm really not. Because everybody else knows things that we don't. I don't care how smart or how educated you are. Other people have things to give. They have information you don't have. And that may be their skills or their job or just their life experiences. But the way to weaken that is simply, there's only one strategy really on all of these, and that's to communicate and get to know people.
Okay, very good. Okay. Deborah wrote in the chat, to weaken the barriers, find more ADDA compliant spaces, provide quiet break rooms, remind people that everyone has some special need, and be open to listening to what make these people more comfortable and effective. I couldn't agree more with you, as we look at that. And likewise with skill levels. I mean, the manual laborer, sometimes we overlook their skills and abilities because they don't fit into the educated group or the group who have college degrees, but yet they still have a lot to add to the group.
Another aspect of that, Roger, is when we're looking for somebody for a position in scouting, like we're looking for a scoutmaster right now, we tend to look at people who have experience in that scouting position, when in fact we might be better off to look for somebody who's never been in scouting. And because it's easier to train people for a position than it is to untrain people for things that they did wrong.
All right, very good. Okay, let's look at our next group. Culture, ethnicity, and nationality. Tom Gates and Anthony Barlow. Do we have you on?
Yes.
Okay.
I came up with the greatest barrier that I could think of would be language.
Oh, perfect.
And one of the things to do with that is either find an interpreter or listen very intently and very, very carefully and speak very slowly, and sometimes use pidgin English when needed.
Okay, good.
And I think
Excellent.
the greatest frustration or the greatest bias I would have would be frustration.
Okay, so true. Okay.
Brett Sutherland has put something in the chat that we ought to mention, that skills and job level are disconnected from people skills, which are critical to great commissioner service. So your local plumber might better make a better commissioner than somebody who's a university professor.
Yes, so true. Thank you so much, Brett, for that comment. There. Okay,
Can I add one thing to your ethnicity issue?
yes,
Is
please.
not every social group and ethnicity in particular is really into volunteering. It's kind of a foreign concept to more than a few groups to do a cross-cultural volunteer organization. And you can really pretty much offend them by asking them to even join in with what they see as a bunch of white guys and run it and into scouting. There's just nothing about scouting that appeals to them or that they understand. And I've traveled around the world, and yeah, when you're talking to a bunch of Muslims in Afghanistan, the idea of purposely scouting in the wilderness, they just think we're nuts.
That's true. And that's why in many situations, the youth, as they participate in school, will find out that scouting exists and they will want to be part of it. But because of some of the cultural, ethnicity, and nationality backgrounds, they may not want to join a unit. That's why in the United States, we have Muslim units. That's why we have it in the disability category. We do have some specialized units where it's only those with disabilities because they don't fit because of overage requirements that can be approved. They don't fit. And so as such, they can still participate, they can still join, and they may want to join their own units, their own groups, so that they can continue to benefit from the scouting program. And we as potential commissioners need to be fully aware of those situations and actually encourage them.
Yeah.
So that they can participate.
The one experience that I had with as a commissioner was we had a young black man who joined, and his comment was it was very difficult for him because nobody looked like him, and it took a level of maturity on his part to step past his own self-imposed barrier. He had a great time, was Great Scout Made Eagle, and it just took him a while to just accept that he was a scout and the other scouts were accepting him as a scout, and that was okay. But it took time. It took a lot of time. I was surprised how long it took. About 2 or 3 years before he really felt comfortable just identifying himself as a Boy Scout, not a minority group.
Right.
So I'll shut up.
Yeah. No
Roger.
problem.
Comment.
Yes.
Roger. I've traveled widely, and I was often in a situation where I had no language ability at all to communicate. But there are lots of other ways to communicate with people who you can't talk to because you don't know their language or they don't know yours. You just have to figure out how to do it. But I've had some very memorable conversations with people where we had no common language by either writing it down or simply body language and hand signals.
Yes.
So
Yes.
don't let language be a barrier to communication.
Okay. And as commissioners, and as you go out into units, that last statement applies to those who have disabilities. One of the most exciting things I had was as the merit badge counselor for the Society Citizenship in Society merit badge is a 26-year-old nonverbal autistic young man, when he let us know how he could answer every one of those questions on that merit badge. And it was exciting because he was able to communicate to us his feelings, his actions. He drew simple pictures. There's more ways to communicate than imaginable. And every one of our units could potentially have an individual with disabilities join them. And there are sources and resources available for them to handle it. Well, that's all good and well. Let's get back here. Let's move on. Unfortunately, time's basically running out. As we look at the interview process, and that when you're setting up your interview team, they need to take and look at their own internal biases and their own feelings so that they can go ahead and process the information. They need to be able to think through the screening process, not eliminating those who have some of the minority backgrounds, and that include everybody when it comes to meeting the needs of the population within the cities where you're at. The other thing is, don't pre-assign a candidate to a specific position. In other words, don't take and say, well, we're going out and recruit for this. Go out and listen so that you can pick the best candidate for the best position and place them in it. As far as finding volunteers, take and expand your vision, and that they're looking beyond your immediate circle of friends or those that you only know in scouting. There, consider younger Eagle Scouts, and that we have a whole cadre of Eagle Scouts out there that part of their oath is that they will give back more. Re-engage volunteers who have left, realizing Lee's comment that sometimes they bring bad habits back into the organization, but at the same time we need to take, and there's a great resource there as far as those who have left. Be an upstander when it comes to looking at it. Actively listen to other people's experiences. Advocate for others that are around. Share opportunities that come your way. Offer support whenever possible. But probably the greatest thing that we have going for us as scouting is that we need to uphold the Scout oath and the Scout law. When it comes to recruiting, when it comes to minorities, when it comes to the underserved populations, we need to take and we need to be able to help other people at all times. We need to be friendly and helpful and courteous and kind and cheerful. That goes a long way when it comes to recruiting those who are there. So as we look at the situation, we have gone over the need for diversity. Okay, we understand the definition of it, and we've done a little bit of practice. If we want, we can always go back and I can pick up the rest of the topics that we didn't cover there. But meanwhile, what questions and comments do you have? A year ago, we went down to Philmont, and when we got through why they says, yeah, we suffered death by PowerPoint.
Mhm.
Roger, I'll add a quick comment that when it came to culture that I was thinking about, and that's in a prior council. There was an initiative to involve the Hispanic community. We were underserving that community, and it was I won't say an abysmal failure, but it was a failure. And after diving in to find out what had happened, we realized that one of our main methods of scouting, which is uniforming, had backfired. That dense geographic community interpreted the uniforms, they associated it with ICE. They thought it was,
Okay.
you know, immigration
Yes.
people coming. And so it was an unintended consequence that had to be modified in order to find some success.
Okay. So in other words, Class B uniforms became the uniform of the day if it's going to succeed in that culture there. Okay.
Yep.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'll add a penny's worth here. I've worked in New Mexico, and we took a dead troop and rebuilt it from the Cub Scouts up. But we did it by recruiting anybody who was basically under 4 feet tall. If someone had a young boy or what, we just basically invited them to come and join our troop of our pack of 7 boys. And by the time we were done and school started, we had 103. And we made a big push to make sure every parent got youth protection training, and we basically kind of twisted arms pretty hard for everybody to become a committee member or some sort of leadership position. And the pack was amazingly successful, and it really built some great Boy Scout troops later. So it can be done. Not having the same success here in Mississippi because I'm not being able to crack the single parent problem, but we're working it. So thanks.
Okay. Well, appreciate all of your comments. Appreciate your help. There are a couple of handouts that are part of the group or part of the instruction. One of them is a handout that deals with some specific ideas in recruiting for diversity. And the other is taking the 9 characteristics that I had in the box and breaking them out as to possible helps and suggestions. And that, any other comments or that from the group? For successful ways to deal with single parents, you can learn a lot from units on military bases. Oh dear. Okay. Bases, the parents aren't single per se, but while soldiers are deployed, they operate that way. A lot of mixed rank dens and activities. That might be a good way for you to look.
That is a thought, but as you can see by I did 22 years in the Air Force poster behind me. I actually used that and recruited heavily to try to bring in single airmen to act as leaders very successfully because they could do short term and help energize parents and show them how fun it was to be leaders. So that helped develop leadership. But my problem is a bit of poverty, single mothers, quite frankly, usually but not always young Black men. There just is no interest in scouting because these women don't know anything about scouting. It's very hard to bridge the boys' interest to the mom's participation. They're afraid of the money issue. They're afraid of the expense, the money, the expense. They're terrified to let their boys go swimming. They're terrified to let their boys do anything that we consider fun and adventure in scouting. It's a real struggle. So anybody's got a magic bullet for that one, I'm all ears.
Okay, very good. Thank you for your comments there on it because that is part of the process.